Hello, everyone. As you'll be aware, there's been some big changes for the personal project for the May 2022 session. And it's a bit of a big departure from the previous guide for the personal project. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there about, exactly what's expected. We've not been through an examination yet of the new personal project. There's no previous examples other than those available already on MYP from the examiners to go off. And we also don't even know the grade thresholds for the new criteria, that are set up. So it really is a bit of a stab in the dark for all the personal project coordinators out there. Along with being the MYP coordinator at my school, I also have the personal project coordinator duties. So this is something I've been going into quite in depth. And I was lucky enough to go on the training for the updated guide. Not that it was greatly helpful. I had to figure out a lot on my own still, but I feel like I've got a little bit of an idea, which I'm happy to share, and also to hear what other people are doing and get some other ideas. So the big changes that we have for the new personal project is that there's just 3 assessment criteria now. So it is, each criteria is still out of 7. So overall, you could say there's fewer marks available, but it also reduces the complexity of the report somewhat. A big change is that there's now a page limit rather than a word limit. So it's for a fully written report, it's a page limit of 15 pages, which as usual scales down depending on if or how much video you add, down to a minimum of 5 pages and I believe 10 minutes of audio. So, this is normal from the previous report in terms of the scaling down of words in the previous report versus video, but in this case, it scales down the pages versus the video. One thing that stood out to me was the reduced focus on the global context. In the previous format of the report, the criteria and the report itself heavily relied on students making reference to the global context in very specific places. And it was easy for quite a good report to fall down considerably if it didn't make those references to the global context. From my reading of the criteria, that's gone from the criteria now. And so it's not to say you can't or shouldn't still reference a global context, but it's no longer necessary to reach the highest mark bands, which I would say is probably a good thing. And we also have another, what I consider quite big change, is that there's no more, adding appendices or attached items. It's all presented in line. All the evidence towards what you're writing in your report is presented in line. So based on this, essentially, all of the previous formats that we've got are redundant. So, but at the end of the day, it is still the same old project. The applying skills portion, to my reading, it's largely unchanged. The process of the students actually demonstrating their project, creating their product, seems to still follow the same pattern as before. And it also seems to be the case that a good report can carry a poorly executed product. Not to say we should be aiming for poorly executed products by any means, but it's always been the case that a student who's quite good at writing and justifying themselves can get away with a less than ideal product and still get a great mark. And this came through the training and the guide itself, that there's a real focus on that 20-hour recommendation in terms of hours of effort towards the product. Some of the examples of projects I've seen in the past, like personally from my students and as examples of the best products, very obviously go over that 20-hour recommendation. It's clear that what they've done took way longer than 20 hours. Yet they seem to be really focused on that, and they're willing to accept products that are less polished that seem to fit more into that like 20-hour recommendation of work, which combines really overall to me to be that they're trying to reduce the amount of work required to complete a project and report. That's just at least what it looks like to me. So what does this mean for anyone submitting personal projects for this exam period in May? As I mentioned, the old templates are not going to hit the new criteria. If you're relying on using one of your old templates that to provide to students, I don't think it's going to end well for you. There's very key elements of old reports that are no longer needed and would actually waste valuable page real estate. Things like cover pages used to be a thing, not a thing. Appendices used to be a thing, not a thing, right? And all we have to go off are the examiner-created examples. Now, based on the examiner-created examples that are on MyIB, I've created a format for my students to follow, and I'd like to share that with everyone now and just go through it quickly to have a look at, what it would take potentially to get a good grade in the new personal project. So here is the format I've provided to my students this session, based on what I learned in the workshop and from reading the guide itself. It's going to be definitely far from perfect, and we really won't know exactly how the new guide is going to be applied until we see the examiner report from this session. But for my purposes, I feel like this is the best I could offer my students for the current guide without any experience. This is in the link down below if you want to have a look or modify it or use it for your own purposes. One thing they make very clear in the guide is that there should be no cover page, that a cover page will be counted towards the page limit. Now, hey, if you have spare pages at the end and you want to include a cover page, I don't see why not, but I would lead with just the title. Then it mentions specifically having a section per objective, very similar to the old report. And as such, I've gone ahead and put in 3 distinct sections in the report: objective A, B, and C. Within that, we've got subheadings that I've thought will hit the criteria quite well. One thing that I've done for each is include a prompt to include evidence. The evidence now comes in line in the report. There's a few stipulations there. It can be any kind of image or diagram, but it must be readable, so there's no cheating by shrinking things down to a minute size to save space. The font must still be 11 size, for example, and any pictures must be easily viewable. Any kind of attempt to screenshot text and shrink it, like in diploma when you do IAs, will be looked upon very unfavorably and will be penalized. So, play by the rules, essentially. This criteria format here is one they use a lot in the examples provided on MyIB. This is really a placeholder because I've got some different ones I use with students. This is like bare minimum though. Then we come down to the timeline section. Again, there's various things I do with my students in there. Then we come down to the applying skills section. Now, I've left room for them to explain their application of up to 4 skills for learning goal and 4 for product goal. Only maybe the best students would manage to do that. But I feel like if you went into some detail with those and provided the evidence, you're going to get close to hitting that 15-page limit, which I'd be looking for my strongest students. Then the reflecting section where we evaluate the product against the success criteria. I'd expect that to be quite a sizable section, especially with the evidence. That will take up a lot of pages, I think, or a lot of page real estate in that section. And then the impact of the project. Any results of surveys looking at the actual outcome of the project from an outside perspective. Again, evidence I think will take up a lot of the page real estate there. Like I said, this is available for anyone to use in the link below, or drop a comment if you think there's something that's been missed or should really be added to a format for the new personal project.